My name is Fadi Farra. I'm a partner with Whiteshield Partners, and I have the honor of facilitating this session on perspective on the manufacturing strategy of the United Arab Emirates. The main objective of this session is to look at, in the context of manufacturing 4.0, in the context of high competition in manufacturing globally, what is the position of the UAE, where it is today, where it should be going, and which policies should we put in place to be able to leapfrog and to become a highly competitive manufacturing country. To do so, I've got the pleasure of introducing His Excellency Abdallah AlFan al-Shamsi, who is the Assistant Undersecretary on Industrial Affairs from the Ministry of Economy, and Franco Bosoni, who is the Director of the Innovation Hub at the Dubai Multi-Commodity Center, representing the voice here of the private sector. So we'll have both public sector and private sector. But without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency to give us a presentation of the manufacturing strategy of the UAE. And after that, I probably will be jumping in a little bit. We'll have a discussion, and then we'll open up the floor for any questions that you may have on challenges and any other opportunities that we may find. That's overall. On this note, Your Excellency, you can take the floor here, or you can stay from this. All right.
Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to be with you here. The presentation actually is a bit long, but I'll try to shed light on some of the main slides, which actually will reflect and highlight the industrial strategy for the UAE. This strategy actually been reviewed 3 times actually in 2016. I'll go straight away to where's the English version?
This one was kept in Arabic because that's the main one. Only this page.
Right. So in this case then, okay. So in this strategy, actually, we try to get it aligned with the Industrial Revolution 4.0. It is going to be linking the industrial sector with the R&D's institutions. We are going to restructure the industrial sector where it's going to be related more with the knowledge-based. It's going to be related to the desampling sort of processing. We are going to be reviewing the logistics, all the supply chains that are related to which serves the industries in the UAE. We actually have conducted a couple of sessions with the local Emirates. Everybody knows that the industrial vision being published by the government of Abu Dhabi, and the same being happening with the government of Dubai. Last week, actually, we had a workshop with the government of Dubai as well, just to make sure that the UAE industrial strategy is fully in line with the local Emirates. What I can tell here is the vision actually is to increase and to raise the bar when it comes to the capabilities of the industries in the UAE. We are going to be focusing on the green industries. We are going to be focusing on the high-intensive industries when it comes to the knowledge, not the labor-intensive, the sustainability, the automation, even the technology when it comes to the cyber security, all the technologies that are serving the industries are going to be renovated. We believe that by 2021 we will be reaching the contribution of the industrial sector to the GDP to 20%, and I'm rest assured that we are going to be exceeding that percentage. We are going to be encouraging the sectors to accomplish the vision of the UAE 2021. We will be focusing on the sectors where we can employ and create a lot of jobs for the UAE citizens. Like what Fadi just mentioned, when we started assessing the how was the history being created by some of the nations who are actually became a pioneer, and when it comes to the their industrial sectors, we have noticed that some of the countries like China, they were focusing on expanding their industries on the quantity wise rather than the knowledge wise, where it took them actually a couple of years in order to develop their sectors. While countries like Germany and Italy and Sweden, they were more focusing on increasing the capabilities, the competitiveness, and all the factors driven by, on the knowledge side of the situation. So when it comes to the circumstances that are related to the UAE as a small country, we will be, or we have to think of a sort of a leapfrog jump, where we have to shortcut the time and try to build up our capabilities based on the knowledge, breaking the gap between the industries and the educational institutions as much as possible, and focusing on the youth. This slide actually reflects the structure of the UAE GDP and how it is consists of a couple of factors. When it comes to the consumer consumption, which represent currently about 57%, we believe that any industrial policy cannot fulfill or try to align the gap when it comes to the consumer behavior. But we strongly believe that this strategy could help in complementing the foreign attracting the FDIs, and also the government expenditure and the export and the imports. So if we can complement these three main factors, we will be definitely reaching that target, which is the 20% contribution to the GDP by 2021. Part of the policies that which we will be adopting within that strategy is to move the tension or the focus from the commodity or the trade to manufacturing. Some of the policies which are going to be focusing on how we can break the gap or fill the gap actually between the mainland industries and the free zones. As everybody knows, that the free zones and the experiment or the experience that the government of the UAE and the economy of the UAE, when it comes to the free zones, that we have achieved a lot in that. We are actually became like a very unique experiment and a very unique case worldwide. So, but when it comes to linking that boom or that economy which is actually produced by the free zones, connected or linked to the mainland economy, I think we have a gap in that. So one of the policies which going to be tackling that part is to fill up the gap between the free zones and the mainland industries. Some of the policies also will be focusing on the green industries. We will be also providing sort of, let's say, a fast track to the young, innovative industrial enterprises. They will be incentivized with a special program, and we believe that by within like a month or two, the full program will gonna be promoted to to the public and to the industries. This slide actually reflects the initiatives which will be adopted by either the federal government and also the local governments. That these initiatives are actually consist of 38 projects. I'm going to go through just a couple of them here, the main ones. Some of them is going to be serving the strategy horizontally, and some of them are going to be serving the strategy vertically. If I just take one example of these initiatives is the gold. As we know, an emirate like Dubai is focusing on the gold when it comes to the trade side. But we strongly believe that one of the initiatives which an emirate like Dubai, and even that is also applicable to the other emirates like Sharjah, is to move the trade of the gold into manufacturing. And I think my colleague Franco is going to shed light on that part. So this is one of the policies which will be adopted very soon. As I mentioned earlier, the tailor-made actually, or the dedicated program for the young industrial companies, that is also another dedicated program. We will put it on a place very soon. The green and the sustainability, and the green applications. These actually, that part is going to take a big focus from the UAE strategy. So I'm just trying to give you a very quick background about the initiatives which will be deployed, hopefully part of it, major part of it actually, within the coming 2 years. That is actually, maybe we can just go through this slide, and then I'll end at my speech. When we did the assessment about the structure of each emirate and how it is structured when it comes to the complexity, we've noticed that an emirate like Abu Dhabi, the complexity is there, but we need to expand that. The same thing is happening also to an emirate like Sharjah. The complexity is also there, but we need to raise the bar even further. Emirate like Dubai, it is a very widely, let's say, when it comes to the trade, and when it comes to the commodities, it is very wide. But when it comes to the manufacturing, there is no big influence. So what we tried actually is to assess the situation for each single emirate, and we try to complement the industries within the emirates. So that is basically the overall look of the industrial strategy. We might keep this slide later for the discussion, but that is actually reflects the contribution of the innovation when it comes to the innovation contribution to the GDP. We have assessed actually that part, and we've noticed that it currently represents about 2.95%, almost 3%, and we are actually targeting to increase that percentage to 5% by 2021. We'll make this is it?
Yep.
Thank you.
That'll be enough. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe what I'll do is I'll carry on a little bit, just give you a bit more explanation on the specifics, and then we will open up the discussion between the panelists and then between the audience. So maybe here, just to explain this graph a bit more in detail, basically think about an economy. Any economy has got innovation embedded into it. Here in the UAE, we have 3% of innovation GDP. So we're sitting in this building. This device here is put into the GDP. This is put into software and the databases. The building, architectural design, that's innovation. The financial instruments, those are all innovation. They're all embedded into the GDP. The point of this is to look now at which sectors the UAE can focus on going forward. And in this case, we looked at two aspects. We looked at, on one aspect, the synergies between the strategy of the UAE and the strategy of different emirates of the UAE, and the economic impact of the UAE. And we looked at three areas. The first one is where the state should not be involved. And this is the non-intervention, what you see here. For example, tobacco, furniture, wood, and so on. Then areas which are polluting, highly polluting. Chemicals, fabricated metals, textiles, coke-refined petroleum products, and so on. Now here it's about having a manufacturing green strategy. And then you have the third part, which is looking at the future, because you can't leapfrog with those two. And the leapfrogging is the next generation. It's machinery equipment, it's transport equipment, aviation, for example, maritime transportation, or cars, rubber plastics, and so on. Those are some of the key sectors going forward, but sectors are not enough. It's also about capabilities. Like His Excellency was saying, you have to look at having the right knowledge in the country, meaning, and I always take this analogy of the phone, but this phone here is not just plastic and metal and smart chip. This phone here is also knowledge, knowledge of engineering, knowledge of marketing, knowledge of design. The question is, how much stock of knowledge is there in the UAE to move from this phone to this computer, as an example. Now, just to close, what you see here is the Ministry of Economy view on the new value chain and how the UAE would be rethinking the value chain. Starting from circular economy, meaning this phone again, building it to be dismantled. Not building it to be recycled, but to be dismantled. So you take it and you design it to have the plastic taken off, the metal taken off in an easy manner. But also having earth material. Also having energy, which is earth's energy, wind energy, solar energy. That's the first part that you see here. Then you move into cyber systems. And that means using Internet of Things. How can we rethink the policies of the UAE, the infrastructure to have Internet of Things everywhere? Cybersecurity. You can have a factory in Vietnam, in China, but the company is here, the control is here. How do you control the security between the UAE and other factories? 3D printing, advanced materials, robotics, logistics 4.0. You could have underground containers, which are drones. You could have mass customization, meaning if you want to buy a shoe, you go on your computer, you choose the color, you choose the shape, you get the barcode. You go to the supermarket, you get 3D printed your shoe. Or you can even ask a friend that has a 3D printer. This is a rethinking of the supply chain of the UAE as well. So what type of the logistics and what type of mass customization we need. All those have policy implications. Now, probably I'll stop here. Just to give you two examples of other countries that are doing this. If you have children, you know, I've got 4. 2 of them would be learning 3D printing at the age of 10 and 11. That's in China, at school. And here you see some of the initiatives that are being discussed with a number of players inside the UAE to look at autonomous truck, smart containers. You saw one outside. Looking at, oh, no, you saw cellular transport systems. Those are all types of initiatives that could be implemented. But for this, regulation is needed. For example, on drones, that has to be updated. Infrastructure, sensors. All of this is part of the 12 initiatives and 39 projects of the Ministry of Economy. I'll stop here and I'll go back so we can have our discussion. I'll probably keep this here. And Your Excellency, I'll probably start with a question for you before I move to Franco. What is you think the main challenge that the UAE has got in implementing this strategy?
I believe there is nothing actually stopping us from moving forward when it comes to deploying that strategy, because it has actually been tailored as per the current situation of the industrial sector. I think one of the things which we might find a challenge is, because part of the points that which we've tried to highlight in that vision is to create sort of complementary between each emirate and another, rather than just keep competing each other negatively. We know that actually something very healthy is to keep the competition is there, but I think which we have reached a stage where we have to compromise each other. If there is, just to give you an example on that, if now an emirate like Dubai is suffering from lack of space, and as you know, the industries, some of the heavy industry requires actually big plots of areas. For these type of activities, it could be, just be forwarded to Abu Dhabi. The same thing also is applicable for the industries which are very high intensive, energy intensive. So we know that Abu Dhabi also is very reliable when it comes to the energy production. So that is actually the thing which we are trying to transform into to the future, inshallah, very soon, or to deploy it in reality, is how we can create the complementary between each emirate and another, where we see the strength is in that certain emirate. It should that industry should go there, and if there is like an emirate that is a very, it's not weak, but we will say, challenging in some areas where, like in northern Emirates, everybody knows that the energy is not sufficient over there. So why don't we just move these industries or these investment to Abu Dhabi? The SMEs might be more applicable to the northern Emirates. So that is actually the one of the things which we think that we might face a challenge, but also I'm rest assured that there is a strong belief in the decision makers when it comes to the local governments. There are actually a very strong interest that we've noticed since we have done the roadshow a couple of weeks ago. We've started with like 3 emirates, and they are strongly encouraged to move that challenge forward and try to cooperate equally when it comes to that part. So I guess it is achievable, very and when it comes also even to the contribution itself, we've rightly said that it is 20%, but we strongly believe that the capabilities available within the UAE, we can even exceed that percentage.
Thank you. Well, what I'll do now is to maybe focus, and I'll put the slide to zoom in a little bit. So maybe, Your Excellency, I'll ask you a bit about the one window, and then Franco, I'll talk, if you can tell us a bit more about the gold strategy. The one window manufacturing, how can this be a reality at the federal level? No, that's for you, sorry. This is for you. So yeah, or maybe we can start with the gold strategy.
The gold strategy, if I just give a little comment on it, like what I've just mentioned earlier, the gold means a lot actually to Dubai trade. We believe that we could do a lot of developments when it comes to the gold manufacturing, rather than just keep going and focusing on the trade only. Dubai is globally positioned in a very competitive position when it comes to the gold. when it comes to the imports and re-export. So I think it's the right time to move, to raise the bar and move forward and try to attract the industries or the manufacturing, the manufacturers which are actually heavily investing in that metal, and try to put it into advanced sort of technology combined with advanced technology and move it forward and make it even more serving the industrial sector. But I think Franco is going to be a more expert on that part, so I'll leave it to you.
Well, thank you, Your Excellency. Indeed, I think you know, I work with DMCC, the Dubai Multi-Commodity Center, and we've been working on growing the trade of gold and the trade of commodities through the UAE for the past 16, 17 years. And we've been very successful, and part of that, as His Excellency just mentioned, is because the UAE has unparalleled, unrivaled logistics infrastructure. You can move things around the world, and you can connect key production and consumption hubs maybe better than anywhere else. And that's helped us to consistently grow the volume of gold and commodities that we can trade through Dubai specifically, but through the UAE in general. You know, to the point where we're now the largest or second largest gold trading hub globally when you look at physical gold trade. But you know, when you start looking at it a little bit more broadly, and after some years, we realize as well that, well, how much further can we go once you're at the top of that segment? How much more trade can we actually pull through? And also it becomes a little bit a race to the bottom. So you keep creating more and more efficiencies. You keep cutting and cutting costs, and it's a little bit like a bubble, you know, like a balloon. Sorry, the walls keep getting thinner and thinner. And so we started engaging now for some time and looking at what are some of the value-added services and what are some of the other activities that we can do that can generate greater amounts of GDP contribution, greater amounts of FDI, and that can create greater staying power for the economy of the UAE in terms of what we can actually contribute to that industry beyond the efficiency and the very low-cost logistics. We've been very successful in establishing Dubai as a refining center, and the UAE more broadly again, where we're now the largest or second largest global refining hub. And we're able to connect and essentially bring in gold that comes from a mine, then refine that, and then send it on to jewelry manufacturing centers. Similarly, we're able to recycle that gold that comes from used jewelry or consumed jewelry basically, and put it back into a gold bar format to put it back into the jewelry industry. So we've been able to create sort of the both sides of that value chain to connect them together and once again grow that sector of the industry. But you keep going further, and we also look at, for example, VAT that is coming down the line, and we realize there's a greater sense of urgency to mobilize this industry to higher value-added segments. Once again, we ask ourselves the question: how can we generate more value out of this industry? And it also, I guess, involves looking at the smaller segments of the industry, which generate maybe a lot of value, but don't necessarily command as much volume as we look at. So, you know, mass market, when you think about commodities in general, it's generally associated with mass volumes but very low margins. When you start thinking at things that are smaller in volume but much higher in value, you start looking at things like jewelry designing. And for example, a 3D printing of jewelry is something that we've started to look at. And how can we actually create something like making UAE, something that actually generates value for the industry and something that becomes a desirable attribute for the jewelry industry? That means investing in technology, that means investing in the knowledge and essentially growing the local population to be able to be at the cutting edge of this industry. You know, some of the biggest jewelry manufacturing and brands around the world have margins that are so big that you know, things like VAT, etc., are a very small element of their cost structure, and we should be able to aspire to position ourselves in that situation. And also, I mean, this is all a little bit looking at what's happening and how do we actually mobilize the sector from where we are to a higher value position, but having a clear vision of where the industry is going into the future. You know, Fadi, you mentioned it at one point. things such as mobile phones and the use of precious metals in technology, and how can we actually participate in the recycling industry, and how can we look at new applications for, in this case, I guess we're talking about gold and precious metals, and play a role in those segments, because those are activities, I guess, that are just beginning to develop, where we have a chance to use what we know today and the infrastructure that we have today to take a leap, or to be able to position themselves in a more competitive area. The last point that I'll make about that, and I think it extends a little bit more broadly also about going beyond gold and into other commodities, is that with so much innovation and the sort of the recreation of the manufacturing processes happening around the world, it creates many opportunities for the UAE to act as an aggregation center. So, you know, looking at manufacturing as a service, and looking at how do you actually decentralize those investments in manufacturing and bring in the latest technologies by essentially growing volumes. What a small economy or a relatively small economy in terms of consumption like the UAE, where it could not compete perhaps with a economy like India or China, by aggregating the needs of many different economies in the region, connecting Africa, China and India through a single value chain, we're actually able to create much greater manufacturing and value addition opportunities than we could otherwise if we just looked at our individual needs. And the fact, sorry, last thing, the fact that we've been able to create this efficiency in logistics through our ports, seaports and airports, now allows us the opportunity to look at how do we actually move in that value chain to create you know, smart, efficient manufacturing processes, and to create value that goes beyond our own economy and is able to actually interact with the rest of the world as well.
Thank you. We have about 10 minutes. What I suggest we do is we open up the floor. You heard from His Excellency that the manufacturing strategy is effectively to leapfrog, to reach 20% of manufacturing GDP, to improve capabilities, to reach 5% of innovation GDP, with 12 initiatives and 39 projects. The floor is yours. Any questions that you may see on challenges to implement the strategy, and any opportunities that you think should be included? Please, sir, if you can just give your name and your organization, and then your question. Thank you. Maybe we'll take another question. This way we can answer two at the same time, if there is one. Please.
First of all, I would like to commend you for this strategy, and it was very refreshing to see that the plastics and other industries are part of the industries that are planned to go forward in the UAE industry strategy. My question is, for a company like, or an industry like the plastics industry, 3D printing, Industry 4.0 is very important and very relevant. I mean, you can imagine all the benefits that comes with it. If I can manufacture a part which is really needed in the plant when there is a shutdown, instead of shipping it all the way from far away. Now, the challenge we face as an industry, and I believe it's a challenge that is faced by many industries as well, is the educational aspect. So, for example, operators, technicians are more used to handling the traditional way, you know, placing a part and so on and so forth. But the knowledge of operating sophisticated equipment that would print a part to fit the purpose is not there. And my question is, what what is the UAE federal government or the Ministry of Economy, how is it addressing this challenge, basically, at an educational level as well, in the vocational development centers that exist in the country?
Your Excellency, there is a question around collaboration with other entities within the government. So what type of consultation? A question on trips, and maybe we may turn it to the audience to allocate as well. And then maybe we'll address afterwards the question on education and then the skill gaps.
I might leave the TRIPS agreement maybe to my colleague Jama, but just to complement or to answer Dr. Amin about the consultation being conducted actually while preparing that strategy. Of course, Doctor, we have actually conducted extensive consultations with when it comes to the local governments and also on the federal level. We have even consulted the private sector, the educational institutions. We have run actually physical and also online surveys. I think it's about 6,000 surveys being actually spread out as part of the assessment. So actually what you are seeing here is actually that is sort of cumulative recommendation being gathered from all the institutions that are related or indirectly even related to the industrial and the pharmaceutical. When it comes to the health part, I think this is also something really crucial. We are touching point on that when it comes also as because we haven't actually completed the presentation. The pharmaceutical industry is something really as a massive sort of or high intensive sector when it comes to investing or attracting the FDIs. So of course that is not going to be thought alone unless we just get the consultation from all the related parties. Regarding the IP thing and all, as I said earlier, the TRIPS my colleague Jamal Kate is gonna might answer part of this question, but I strongly believe actually in order to attract the inventors and the registrations, we have to come up with a very solid, strong system where we actually guarantee the protection of all the inventions and the IPs here in the UAE. There are actually a couple of policies where actually attracting the innovators, the entrepreneurs who are actually interested or they are actually pioneers and coming up with inventions to attract them here, even when it comes to simplifying or granting them some incentives when it comes to their work permits or while visiting to the UAE. So actually the direction is there, fully there. And I assume that is strongly will complement the industrial sector within the UAE. I don't know, Mohammed, if you have any comments with regards to the TRIPS.
Yes, thank you very much, Excellency. And on TRIPS, it's, as everybody knows, it's an international agreement. It's one of the World Trade Organization agreement, one of the main pillars of the WTO, which is trade in goods, trade in services, and TRIPS. So TRIPS is something very important for trade, and as a UAE member of the WTO, so we are also have commitment on international level to protect patent, to have protection for the copyright, trademarks, geographical indication, industrial design, patent, anti-competitiveness practices, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of decisions on the international level how to protect, how members can do more efforts to protect the patent when it's come to trade. There is a guide for all countries they have to follow, and there are some certain of level that should be like a commitment for all countries. They should respect it, they should go forward, go ahead in order to make extra efforts to protect this agreement and to enhance it, and the level of the implementing these agreements differ from countries to countries. Like the developed countries and developing countries get like more grace period to implement their laws and regulation. At the end of the day, there are some technical assistance given for the least developed countries how to protect this. As Ministry of Economy, we are keen to make our level of commitment on the international level. However, we consider to be like a developing country, and we have also some flexibility. We need to use this flexibility.
Very good. I think there was a question on the skill gaps. Do you want to address, or should I give it a try?
Just to thank you, Abdurrahman. I think we have a lot to do when it comes to reskilling the talents here within the UAE. I think like what we've earlier mentioned, filling up the gap between the industries and the educational institutions, that is really crucial. We have to re-engineer, let's say, the majors. We need to make sure that what is really needed in the industries need to be compromised with the educational system. We have to redraw actually the entire supply chain map when it comes to the industries, the existing industries, starting from the heavy industries to the downstreaming ones. We have to make sure that all the supply chain map is well known by all the parties. We need to make sure that database, I mean, defining the players or the manufacturers who are actually active in their sectors. We have to define them. We have to come up with a database which could be shared to everybody in order to make sure that the supply is existed and no need to think straight away to import these commodities from outside. So actually, answering your question, I think we have to think of the industry and also the link with the educational system. I think by having a very clear vision and very clear plan when it comes to the R&Ds and also the educational system, then we will be able to feed the industries with the skills required.
I realize we're pretty short on time. I think you referred to the next generation R&D, next generation education as well. The report, I think, is a big report. And I think we can have room for one last question. Yes, please.
Thank you for the informative presentation. I want to touch upon one point, which I think in the previous slide, about the policy of free zone
alignment between the free zone and the mainland. Yes, value chain. Yes, yes.
This is very important, actually. So far, we do not have good linkage between industries. That means an industry to supply another industry by some finished products. That we are lacking, actually. And I feel that the free zones are very well equipped to have the larger type of industry, which can depend on the domestic industries for supply of semi-finished products, and therefore increase the value added. We have a locked value added because these industries, they import semi-finished products, while they can get it, from the local suppliers. So this policy, I think, is very important, but it needs, how we go about it. That is what I want.
Maybe Your Excellency, on the one UAE, you can tell us about the one window between free zones and mainland, as a practical example.
The one window can be achieved if we, as like what Dr. Faisal starting with linking the free zones first of all. As you know, Dr. Faisal, the restriction is there because of the regulations based on the regulations which actually created these free zones. Currently, actually, we cannot get them, directly communicated or get them penetrated to the mainland market unless we tackle these legal sort of issues. So part of the policy is, just to overlook and see how we can tackle these issues. And definitely, there are a lot of challenges actually are there, especially when it comes to opening the global market to these free zones and get them treated as the main land industries. So there are actually some challenges, and this is actually where we actually came up with that policies to tackle these legal issues, and also try to think smartly by combining these free zones. As you know, I mean, there are actually a lot of investment and a lot of infrastructure being invested in these free zones. We could even think of naming them, or how we can get them integrated without all these borders. No more borders. How we can tackle that, even if it is not complete integration, at least partial integration, by removing these borders and try to apply some of the mainland regulations on these ones, so they can be treated equally with the mainland ones. So I think this one of the things which we are actually discussing, and try to make sure that from the legal aspect it is right to be done, and then the other policy, which just Mr. Fadi mentioned, the one window can be implemented. What we mean by the one window is we'll try to, after re-engineering all the procedures that are related to the industrial licensing and the issuing the certificate of origin and all these procedures which are actually required either by the federal entities or the local emirates, we will try to re-engineer them, try to reduce the number of steps, try to unify these procedures in order to make it much easier for the industrial investor to start investing. So I think that is what could be done through the one window or the one UAE, like what you said in that policy.
I'm aware of time.
Dr. Amin,
then maybe just a very short, because I say otherwise the other team is going to tell us that we have to leave. So please go ahead.
I just comment to the response of your excellencies. I'm so proud that what the Ministry of Economic is doing in terms of supporting the manufacturing industry. I will just brief you that I wish if we put together more in supporting the pharmaceutical industry and to support the GDP in the Emirates, because we became now one of the leading countries worldwide. I'll give you a small evidence that we had 14 factories in 2015, jumped to 16, 2016, and now we have the pipeline 18 factories. By 2020, we will be having 54 factories, the highest in number and quality among the Middle East. That's number one. Number two, we are the only country above the Middle East that we have 53 scientific offices which they represent international pharmaceutical companies who they produce innovative medicine, not the generic, innovative. And this is, they spend 20 billion dirhams in the United Arab Emirates. I think we need to protect that industry. We need to work together to protect them and support them. Although the local government of Dubai, among the 6 pillars for the industry, pharmaceutical is one of them. Abu Dhabi, again, pharmaceutical and medical is one of them, which it means that I will be glad and I'll be having the honor to share with you those documents. Today at 4 o'clock I have a presentation. Here we are talking about the pharmaceutical and medical industry in the United Arab Emirates. Concerning the trips, I do appreciate your comments, but my recommendation, I think we should stick strongly to the trips, because we recently started for the last 4 years to introduce the production of innovative medicine. I'm quite sure you know the difference between innovative and generic. Innovative, which is new innovation, protected 20 years from the date that the pharmaceutical companies started to see it to FDA or EMEA and Europe. To be approved in 5 years, the remaining is 15 years. After the 20 years, then the generic product will come up. Now we started to encourage the international companies to produce innovative medicine. And it's 5 MOUs were signed, 2 in the pipeline by 2017, which it means by 2020 we will be the 3rd leading country above Middle East to produce innovative medicine. Now, if we really will support our industry and will bring in the new innovations and the new businesses to our people.
Very good, thank you. I think we need to close. Your Excellency, I would like to leave you with the final words. Any closing remarks?
Thank you very much. But just to compliment Dr. Amin, since you've just raised this concern, I totally agree to what Dr. Amin just mentioned. We strongly actually believe in supporting and protecting the innovators and the inventors and the patents. Maybe I can just recall one of the initiatives which the Ministry of Economy actually just has started with or came up with is the International IP Center, which was actually launched during the Innovation Week. So that actually reflects how that topic is hot for the government, is to make sure that it is really attracting the innovators and make sure that they are granted with the full support and protection. So we are actually on that direction, and of course we will be completely open to hear from you as an expert coming from this sector to complement the opinions and see how we can even bring that topic even forward. So I totally agree with you.
Very good. Franco, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Thank you.